Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered why saying something out loud makes it stick in your memory better than just thinking it? Well, this new study dives deep into that production effect and finds something fascinating. Even thinking about saying something can boost your memory, even if you never actually say it. Imagine you're trying to remember a grocery list. You might read it silently, or maybe you actually say the items out loud, like milk, eggs, bread. Most of us feel like saying things aloud helps us remember them better. And science agrees, this is called the production effect. For a long time, scientists thought the benefit came from the actual act of producing the word, the sound, the muscle movements, but this research suggests it's more about what happens before you say it. The production effect is a well-known memory boost. It's been around for a long time, with people using it as a trick for remembering things for ages. It works for lots of things, not just speaking, but also writing, or even just mouthing words silently. The traditional idea is that when you say a word aloud, you create a special memory tag for it, like a unique fingerprint. This tag makes it stand out compared to words you only read silently. Think of it like special edition sneakers versus plain white ones. The special edition just catches your eye more. There are a few ways this distinctiveness idea plays out. One is the distinctiveness heuristic. Basically, you feel like you probably studied it if you said it aloud recently. Another is the relative distinctiveness idea, where produced words just naturally stand out during memory retrieval. But some researchers are starting to think that something else is going on. Something to do with how much attention you're paying. If you know you have to say something aloud, you might just pay more attention to it than if you're just reading it silently. That extra attention could be the real key. And this is where things get really interesting with the use of pupillometry, that's measuring the size of your pupils during a task, which can tell us about how much your brain is engaged or how much attention you're paying. One recent study found that people's pupils got bigger before they even said a word aloud, and this bigger pupil size was linked to better memory. This suggested that just preparing to say a word, even before you've made a sound, could be important. But that previous study couldn't entirely separate the act of preparation from the act of producing the word. They needed a way to see what happens when you prepare to produce a word, but then you don't. This is where the clever design of the study comes in. They used a modified version of a memory task where participants were told to wait for a go signal before saying a word aloud, but on some special trials. That go signal never appeared. These are called catch trials. The idea was to see if just anticipating saying the word, even without doing it on a catch trial, would still lead to a memory benefit. So how did they set this up? They had two experiments that were basically the same, except the second one also tracked people's eye blinks and pupil size. They gathered around 30 to 40 psychology students for each experiment. They used a bunch of words, and for each word they gave instructions. Sometimes they told participants to read the word aloud, and sometimes to read it silently. Then, they told them to wait for a go signal. This signal would appear on most trials, telling them when to say the word aloud or silently. But on about a third of the trials, the go signal never came. For these catch trials, participants were just supposed to do nothing and wait for the next word. After studying all the words, participants had to take a memory test. Think of it like this. You see a word, okay, I am supposed to say this out loud, you get ready. Then, if the go signal appears, you say it and hopefully remember it better later. But if the go signal doesn't appear on a catch trial, you've still gotten yourself ready to say it. You've put in that mental effort. Even though the words never left your mouth, the researchers wanted to see if that preparation alone made a difference in memory. And guess what? It did. In both experiments, even on those catch trials where participants never actually produced the word, they still remembered the words better than words they were instructed to read silently. This is the first big finding. Preparing to produce a word even without the actual production is enough to give you a memory boost. It's like your brain says, "Whoa, this word is important. I better pay attention and make a good memory of it," just because you were expecting to use it. Now, this preparation effect wasn't as strong as when people actually said the word aloud. The paper mentions the behavioral production effect was roughly halved for catch trials compared to the trials where production actually happened. That makes sense. Actually doing it probably adds an extra layer of memory enhancement. But the fact that any benefit was there when production was withheld is a really significant finding. What about that pupil data from experiment 2? It showed that even on catch trials, when participants were getting ready to speak, but then didn't, their pupils showed a pattern similar to what happens when they do speak. Their pupils got bigger in the alert condition compared to the silent condition, right around the time they would have been expected to speak. This pupillary response is thought to reflect increased attention and activation in the brain. So, their bodies were showing signs of engagement and preparation. even when the final action was skipped. Interestingly, the researchers further broke down the memory benefit. They looked at two components of memory: recollection, remembering specific details about seeing the word, and familiarity, just a general feeling of knowing the word. When words were actually produced on the early and late go trials, the production effect seemed to benefit both recollection and familiarity. But on those catch trials, where production was skipped, the benefit was primarily seen in recollection. This suggests that the preparation phase might be particularly good at building those richer, more detailed memories. This is where the paper really challenges older ideas. The traditional thought was all about the distinctiveness of the physical act of speaking, but this study shows that the anticipation, the mental preparation, the thinking about speaking, is already creating memory benefits. It suggests that a good chunk of the production effect isn't from the sound waves or the mouth movements, but from the attentional and motivational boost that comes from knowing you are about to engage in a more active memory encoding process. The researchers interpret this by saying that preparing to speak activates attentional systems in the brain, like the locus coeruleus norepinephrine system, which is linked to focus and alertness. This heightened attention then leads to better encoding of the word. This is separate from the actual production, which might add its own distinctiveness. It's like priming yourself to pay closer attention to something important, even if the final crucial step never happens. This finding also connects to other areas of memory research. For example, studies on enactment, where you actually perform an action described by a word, and drawing, where you draw a picture of a word, also show memory benefits. This research hints that maybe a common factor across all these different memory boosting techniques is the preparation phase. The planning and anticipation might be a shared mechanism that strengthens memory, not just the final action. One interesting point is that when they compared Experiment 1 behavioral only with Experiment 2, behavioral plus pupillometry, the memory advantage for production was slightly smaller in Experiment 2. They suggest this might be because some features of Experiment 2, like using a chin rest for eye tracking, could have been slightly distracting. This is a good example of how, even well, controlled studies can have subtle influences, and it's why looking at data from different experiments is so important. The researchers also mentioned that they didn't find a stronger effect for delaying production, which some previous studies had suggested. They offer a few reasons why their study might have differed, like using recognition memory instead of free recall, or how participants knew about the possibility of delayed production. This highlights how experimental design and testing methods can shape the results. Finally, they touch on the idea that maybe catch trials don't just reflect preparation, but also a sort of mild violation of expectation. However, they argue against this because participants were explicitly told that go signals wouldn't always appear. Plus, the pupil data showed a similar preparatory signal even on trials where the go signal was just delayed, not absent. So, the preparation explanation still seems strongest. So, what is the big takeaway here? Preparing to speak, even if you never actually do it, is enough to give your memory a significant boost for that word. It's not just about the sound or the physical act, it's about the mental focus and attention that comes with intending to produce something. This means that the production effect is more complex than we thought, and a large part of its power might come from simply getting your brain ready to engage more actively. It reframes actions like speaking or drawing not just as encoding processes, but also as signals to our brains to pay attention and remember better. I think this study is really important because it shifts our understanding of how memory works. We often think of memory as something that happens passively, but this research shows how our intentions and our anticipation of actions can actively shape our memory. It's a great example of how modern techniques like pupillometry can reveal hidden mental processes. A potential limitation, as they mentioned, is that the effect on catch trials was smaller than on actual production trials. Future research could explore this further. Maybe they could try different types of tasks, like writing or drawing, to see if this preparation effect is universal. It also makes me wonder about everyday situations. When you are about to ask a question or tell someone something important, does that very act of preparing to speak already start to solidify that information in your mind? It's a fascinating thought. This research really highlights the power of intentionality in learning. It's not just about the activity itself, but the mental state we enter into when we anticipate that activity. It encourages us to think about how we can leverage that preparatory phase in our own learning. So next time you need to remember something, maybe try not just reading it or even saying it, but really getting ready to explain it. That mental warmth Up might be the secret ingredient for a stronger memory. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of cognitive science. And let us know in the comments what other research topics you'd like us to cover. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.